introverted noise. Hurry up, Daddy.
Let's do it.
Rolls out to the right. 5 seconds to go in the first half. Dante fires deep to the left. Moss caught it at the 11, but now he pitches it to Mo Williams. Touchdown!
You gotta be kidding me!
All right, and welcome back to another episode of the Climbing the Pocket podcast. I am your host, Jayson Brown. You can find me on Twitter at BrownJayson, and eventually we'll have the full crew here. And no, it's not Yinka who's late this time. QB1 got some stuff going on. He'll be with us in just a little bit, but we're going to jump right in. We're going to get this thing going. Miles, my man, how you doing? How you been?
What's up? I'm doing good, man. Just been busy.
Oh, been busy. So what's been going on? Anything that we need to talk about? Any news you wanted to, go into? Little, announcement maybe? Anything going on in your life? Anything keeping you busy, keeping you running around? What's going on, my man?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna share it on the timeline, but my wife's pregnant. So, we're excited to share that news, and we're excited to start our family up.
Oh boy, man! Big things.
Yeah,
man. Excited for you. Has Prince put in his bid to be the Godfather yet, or
Twice now?
Oh yeah, I don't know. Like, just even trying to imagine Prince like holding a child, it's just my brain won't do it right now.
I feel like he would. I don't even know if he'd be able to do it.
You guys are talking to the one dude who, I mean, I know you can't see it, but I love kids and kids love me. So I just become a jungle gym every time I get around some kids. They just climb up my back and my arms and shoulders and stuff. So
oh no, I'm just saying my mind won't allow those things to come together. Like, it just doesn't right now. The idea of you with kids, just I don't know.
I understand that sentiment, but yeah. I'm good.
All right, so Prince, any baby announcements? Anything going on? Anything you want to let the people know before we get this thing going?
I'm just gonna say that you guys will find out as soon as I find out. So
okay, all right.
We're all gonna be surprised at some point.
Yeah, we'll all find out together, I guess. All right. Well, let's jump right in because we took a little bit of time off, so sorry, y'all. Just schedules didn't work up there over the Thanksgiving break, and a lots happened, lots going on around the NFL. So let's jump into one of the stories that is making news right now, and we don't have to spend too much time on it, but it's happening. I want to get your takes on it. So, Miles, Reuben Foster, Washington, what's going on there? Doug Williams, I mean, he came out with a statement that people were like, huh? And then the next day he basically just came out, doubled down on that joint and kept it moving. Like, what are your thoughts on everything that's going on, with the team in Washington and how they're handling the situation with Reuben Foster getting released after yet another allegation of domestic violence?
Yeah, I mean, this just tells you everything you kind of need to know about the player. I mean, we knew there was question marks going into it with Reuben Foster going into the NFL, coming out of college. Looks like he got falsely accused previously earlier in the summer, I think it was. But it had to have been bad enough this time. There had to have been enough evidence at this point or something for the 49ers just to let him go this early in his contract and this early in everything. I don't know the full story of what happened, but I know he got arrested. But it sounds like they weren't ready to put up with anything with Reuben Foster off the field. So no matter what it was, it sounded like they were ready to get rid of him. So I think it was a good move by them. But then Washington, I mean, man, I will give them this credit. So we know in the NFL doesn't care about players' off-field issues if they're good enough players on the field. It's basically known. Like, we know this is the truth. Like, they've shown time and time again this is how they operate. And at least what's the guy's name? Jayson? I just blanked.
Doug Williams.
Doug Williams. I mean, at least he's being honest about it, right? Like, I mean, that's I guess the only credit I would give him is the fact that there's the honesty that he's like, yeah, I mean, he's a terrible human being. Reuben Foster, he's basically said whatever he wanted and it was just like, yeah, we know, but we don't care. We're just gonna go forward with it anyways.
It's really similar, Miles. That's a good point. It's really similar to, I mean, I hate to bring it to politics and stuff, but it's kind of like what we're seeing in America right now. A lot of politicians in the past have kind of hidden behind, certain terms and stuff that you kind of knew had some ties and some ism, whether it be racism, sexism, classism. You knew that they were hiding behind these things. And here comes a guy like, Donald Trump, who really just says what's on his mind, really just says like, hey, this is what we're all thinking. This is how I think. If you have a problem with it, then I mean, you're going to have to deal with that on your own side. So like, yeah, it's a level of, you have a person who is able to just voice. I mean, it's wrong. Obviously we disagree with it, but there's someone who's willing to not really pretend as if they're down with the cause and just say, "Oh no, I don't care. I literally don't care about these."
And so Prince, you just said something that I find a little bit interesting, and I guess we're jumping right into the pool on this thing here, and again, I don't want it to derail too much because we got a lot to cover and not too much time. But you just said something where you said, we know it's wrong. I guess the thing is, does anyone care? Because like we'll point out, and whatever anytime something like this happens where someone does something terrible or whatever it might be in the NFL, everyone will take to Twitter and there'll be a day of, oh my God, I can't believe they did whatever that thing was. But the next day we're on to the next thing, and by Sunday we're watching the games like nothing ever happened. And let's say Washington does whatever sham investigation teams do when these things kind of happen, and they magically clear Reuben Foster or something. For a couple of games, it'll be a footnote. But like, do we actually care? I feel like we pretend that we care about these things, but I don't think we actually do. So long as it doesn't get in the way of, the football.
Well, look at Joe Mixon, look at Tyreek Hill, look at Ben Roethlisberger, look at all of these situations that that pro athletes in general have gone through. We don't talk about that stuff for those players now because they produce on the field, so people don't care.
Yeah, can I to address that question, Jayson? I think the best thing that I can do is kind of address something that Dave Chappelle talked about last year. He talks about how we live in the generation of the age of spin. How there's just so much content that we have going to us, that honestly we can get upset about something, but we don't even have time to really truly get angry about it, stay in our feelings on it, really discuss it, and before something else comes out that angers us just as more, if not worse. So it is a level of, yeah, we do care about it, and it's not that obviously the next day we're not talking about it. It's like we're on to something else because, like, again, that's what the age of social media brings to us. 24/7 news cycles bring to us. Something is happening every single minute of the day where it's like you could literally just spend all day angry at stuff, and
most people do when you
most people do, yeah, exactly. People do.
And I guess to move off this, because again, I feel this is one of those topics and things that kind of ideas more so than just like the Reuben Foster situation that we could talk about for an extended period of time. And I feel like over the years we probably have talked and touched on these sorts of topics at many different points in time. But whoever's handling PR for Washington just needs to they need to get paid more money, because between Reuben Foster and AP over the last couple of weeks here, they have been putting in that work. Someone needs to take AP's phone away from him, because man, that man loves to be yelled at. But anyway, let's keep this thing moving. Let's move it along here and talk about another story that made news for a different reason, something that's not nearly as serious as what's going on with Reuben Foster and those allegations, but something that came up nonetheless, because it started a lot of different conversations that I saw across media platforms about kind of who's allowed to say what about when, and who's entitled to do what when, and things like that. And so the situation that came up was Baker Mayfield Giving Hugh Jackson the cold shoulder, which, whatever. That's, he was his coach. He didn't play him. He went somewhere else. Baker's, a competitor. But then he kind of went on after the fact to explain the reason that he gave Hugh Jackson the cold shoulder, being that, Hugh Jackson was, in Cleveland trying to get them to buy into his messaging. And then when, Hugh Jackson was fired, Hugh Jackson basically went to a division opponent and started working there. And Baker Mayfield didn't think that that was cool. So obviously that was a big talking point. That game was full of many a petty and hilarious moment, but this ended up being the thing that kind of, people ran with after the fact. Miles, from your perspective, you played, college sports, you're a very competitive dude. What are your thoughts on kind of Baker's perspective in all this and kind of how he handled things with this Hugh Jackson situation after the game?
Yeah, so I'll start with the fact that I don't mind Baker having whatever kind of vendetta he has against Hugh Jackson, for the simple fact that we don't know how things were behind the scenes with Baker and Hugh. We don't know how all that and how everything was handled there, in terms of, Baker wasn't the starter day one, or week one, I should say. Baker played well in the preseason, so there could have been in some of that, maybe he felt that Hugh was holding him back. I guess my only issue was his reasoning outside of that was he didn't like, after Hugh got fired, nonetheless, that Hugh was going to a division rival. That, I guess that's where my disconnect with Baker here is like, I mean, why does it matter? It's the business. And I think they touched on it on, I can't remember where I saw it, but someone touched on it. Maybe Stephen A. Smith and Deion Sanders. That's where it was. I think it was on First Take or whatever it was. He mentioned just Baker still being in that college mindset, that he doesn't view it as a business yet, because for him it's not quite that, because he's still so early in his career as a rookie. He's still young, so he's still kind of feeling that out in terms of that process, and watching a coach leave or get fired from his team and go to the same division rival, because with that, that's going to happen. And where I think Baker's misunderstanding is that happens all the time in places like the NFL or across businesses in general. And one thing I think Baker's going to understand down the road is that it's going to come back to him at some point, that he's going to have to understand that it is a business. And for him, that he left Oklahoma, or he left Texas Tech in college and went to a conference rival, if you want to call them a rival, whatever, but a conference in the same conference as when he went to Oklahoma. So I kind of think it's funny that that's his rationale. Not that he, like I said, he can have all these feelings he wants. I totally that's on him. He has his personal things with Hugh that, I don't disagree with him on that. I guess I just disagree with him on how he views the whole Hugh situation right now, or his rationale behind it. So I don't know. You guys can piggyback off of that, but I just feel like there's some hypocrisy on his end, because he did it in college. But I mean, whatever. He was 18, 19 years old. I didn't hold it against him for doing that. I just think it's funny that he holds it against Hugh Jackson for doing it in the NFL after getting fired, nonetheless.
Oh boy, I like it. Miles coming out hot. Prince, what are your thoughts? Baker, Hugh, does he have a point? Do you agree, disagree? Where are you at with the whole thing?
I'm kind of with Miles, in which I think Baker, if he wants to express what he's going to express, he should be able to do that. But I think at the end of the day, I think, we don't know necessarily. I think my first initial thought is just man, it's a little immature for Baker to treat his former coach like that, all that stuff. But then I'm just I've been personally in a situation with a previous boss or whatever, and I know how it felt to I don't want to shake your hand. I don't ever want to see you again. I mean, we are not cool in any kind of circumstance. So there's another part of me that sympathizes if there was some level of toxicity with that relationship. So, but I'm also on the lines of just like, if you have your grievances, handle it like, two grown adults, and obviously just talk it out. I didn't appreciate the way that you handled things. I thought I was going to be the starter. I thought I played the best, and then just go from there. But I'm with Miles, where I'm not really a huge fan of other people, kind of getting upset at others, trying to make money. I mean, this is a business nonetheless. Sometimes with coaches, there's not as much of a meritocracy, but even so, I mean, there's some coaches that aren't in the league anymore. So, I mean, Hugh needs to do whatever he has to to make money, feed his family and stuff. And I don't think Baker should have an issue with it.
All right. Well, yeah, I'm inclined to agree with y'all on that one there. That I really don't like, as much as people made of this, I really don't feel like anyone was like wrong in like a big kind of way on this one, because yeah, Baker's entitled to feel how he feels, and he had a platform. He let people know how he felt about it, and that's something that Baker is going to do. I think as he does mature in the league, maybe on issues of other grown folks' money, maybe he won't speak up as much, but it was his place to do so. And I'm with y'all on the fact that he was a right to make a living. So he got fired from one place, he got hired another place. It's not like he can be like, well, let me not go work here because I might hurt the feelings of the people who just fired me. It's I'm gonna go get this money where I can get this money. So it's one of those things where I think it was an interesting talker. It was fun to see kind of where people kind of landed on these things and how they justified their points of view. But ultimately, I think it was such a heated conversation because really both sides of the debate, both sides of the conversation really had valid points of view. It was just a matter of how maybe things were expressed. But let's get this thing moving along. Let's talk about some of the Vikings news, some of the things that are happening in Viking land. And obviously, we didn't have a show over Thanksgiving, so we didn't do a preview of the Packers game. But that game has happened. The Packers stink. I think I think we can say that now. We can say that definitively. The Packers are not good. And yeah, I guess we'll start with the local boys on this one here. Saxy Prince. I know that for those of you in Minnesota, and I guess Minnesota, the state, Minneapolis, St. Paul. I guess for you guys, it was just a great weekend all around with everything that happened in college football and the NFL. I guess help me understand kind of how it all played out for you in terms of the Packers game and what that meant just because of the rivalry versus the fact that we beat the Packers doesn't really mean that we've beat a good team yet this year as the Vikings, because the Packers stink.
Yeah, I mean, that rivalry will forever be there. We do have younger brother syndrome here when it comes to the Packers. They've had two starting quarterbacks, and both have made their staple in the league in some way or another. And we've just kind of been on the losing end for a good majority of that. Basically after Randy left, the organization has kind of limped on since. So, I mean, just anytime we beat the Packers, I know it's just an energetic thing for the fan base, even though I think they can admit Packers defense isn't the greatest, but they still have the best quarterback in football. And then with that, you have like the Gophers, obviously, who, beat Wisconsin. That hasn't happened in years. We haven't had the Axe here in 15 years, as well as that's like the first time since I believe 1993 that we beat Wisconsin in Madison to get the Axe back. So again, there's a lot of perpetual younger brother syndrome where it's like we've just been beaten so much by Wisconsin teams. So it just energizes the fan base and energizes the state, just because we would like to see this us being able to grow up from being the younger brother and being able to kind of hang on the field with both these Wisconsin teams.
Okay, that makes some sense. And I guess, Miles, from your perspective now, okay, understand kind of the rivalry bit of it and why it's a big deal, locally. But what do you take kind of out of that Packers game? I guess first, give me your kind of overall, take, recap, thoughts on the game. But then, when you take a step back from the emotion and do look to see that, that is a not good team that we beat there, how does that kind of weigh into your evaluation of what the Vikings are or aren't as we move forward with things?
Yeah, to start to recap the game, I think I thought it was arguably the best game the Vikings have played top to bottom in terms of all three phases of the game. not including the 2 missed field goals. I mean, they ended up becoming a factor at the very, very end because the final score was 7 points instead of 10 or 13. But I think the 1 missed field goal wasn't on Dan Bailey. It got pushed from a 51-yard field goal, which he had originally made. I'm not going to go down this whole but false start, ends up missing the next kick. But otherwise, I thought the rest of the phases, all 3 phases, the team played exceptionally well. They got really good pressure. You can tell that this team and Mike Zimmer has studied how to play Aaron Rodgers over his course of being the head coach of the Vikings because of the way they rushed Rodgers. They only used 4, but you could see even on, I think, a Danielle Hunter sack or even just a tackle or whatever it was on Aaron Rodgers, he looked like he was going to rush up field and open up a running lane for Aaron Rodgers, but he stopped. He kind of like baited Aaron Rodgers into running up into that lane and tackled him. Like I said, can't remember if it was for a sack or a tackle or whatever it was. But still, like, it was just one of those, you can tell that how they've been preparing and understanding how Rodgers likes to move around and create. They're taking that stuff away. So I think that was really big. And then I thought this was probably Kirk Cousins' best overall game. I thought the game plan was probably the best we've seen from John DeFilippo all season. And he used it to his advantage and how to use guys like Dalvin Cook, Stefon Diggs, Adam Thielen, even getting Kyle Rudolph involved. You saw all phases on offense for the most part be successful. We know the running game it still isn't quite there, but I mean, they still use the run game effectively enough to help them out when they needed it. And creatively enough, like you saw some sweeps to Diggs, stuff like that to help loosen things up. So that from that perspective of things, I thought it was a really good game. Like to your point, Jayson, that they're not very good, but still, I mean, being able to beat a team, an Aaron Rodgers-led team, no matter what the circumstance, is always big. Because that game right there was a determining factor for this team moving forward. Because if you lose that game, you're behind the 8 ball significantly. So it was really nice and refreshing to see this team come out and perform at a high level on on a national level, on Sunday Night Football to do it. I know they were at home, but still they came to play, and that was really exciting to see. And hopefully that continues the trend. And then to the point of the rivalry aspect of things, I mean, like you guys said, Prince and I live in Minnesota. I work with a lot of Packer fans. We're around a lot of Wisconsin fans in general. So just anytime we have a chance to beat them, it's just always refreshing for us and just gives us that, like, I think in Minnesota sports, we're starting to get to that point where we're catching them a little bit. I like to Prince's point, we're not, we're that, like, technically that little brother still or whatever, because they have the Super Bowls, they have some of the acumen, but I think we're getting to that point where we're top to bottom. For some of our sports, we're getting to that point, especially in football. I think we're finally starting to catch them. I mean, even when they have Aaron Rodgers, I still think this team is, what are they, 3-0-1 over the last 2 years, and I think they, what was it, 4-1-1 in the last 3 years, or however that math adds up. But they've done really well against the Packers over the last few seasons, so it's refreshing for that.
Yeah, no doubt. We definitely, I think at this point, it's clear to say, like, the Vikings are a better overall football team than the Green Bay Packers. The only thing that really at any point would make anyone think the Green Bay Packers would have a chance is the fact that they had Aaron Rodgers. And to your point, Mike Zimmer was brought in many ways to neutralize Aaron Rodgers, and has figured out how to do so fairly well. But before we move any further, we have breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. Breaking news. QB1 has joined the podcast. JR, my man, how you doing?
Good, man. How y'all guys doing tonight?
Man, we're doing all right. So I know that we're talking about football and things that we like to pretend are important here and there, but we already had Miles go through, talk about some things going on with him, and I'd be remiss if we didn't, give you an opportunity to let us know what's going on in the life of QB1, because all over social media we saw some news, my man. What is going on with you, and why are you feeling like Kobe?
Yeah. So me and the wife are expecting two little twins next June. We're starting our own little football team, so we're excited about that.
Oh my goodness. JR and Miles. You're rolling at the same time, but JR decided he would not be outdone, had to come through with the twins.
Yeah.
JR's gonna have
what's
a
the
QB and then he's gonna have corners, so he's gonna have the two most expensive players right away.
Man, I keep telling y'all, you better give them children a basketball.
Yeah, my kid will play baseball.
Yeah, get them guaranteed contracts.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, when's yours due? I forgot to ask.
The second week of June.
Okay.
Yep.
How about you, Miles?
June 8th.
9th. June 9th for us.
Miles,
for us.
oh boy. Oh boy, the next competition has begun.
For real.
Oh man, love it. Well, all right, JR, we got you here, so it's gonna put you to work right away, man. Coming out of things here from the perspective of a Vikings fan who is not, I guess, as personally attached to the interstate rivalry. What are your thoughts coming out of the Packers game? How did you feel about how the team performed? What are your thoughts on kind of how we use this game to project what the team is going to be for the remainder of the season?
Oh, it was really encouraging, and especially after it got off to a rough start, especially offensively. The first two drives they went 3 and out, but after that, John DeFilippo started opening up the offense a little bit, and he started running it through Dalvin Cook and Stefon Diggs, which is what we wanted to see from the start. And he mixed a little bit of Adam Thielen in there as well. So he got his playmakers the ball, and that's what you want to see from Kirk Cousins. I thought he was very efficient. He took what the defense gave him, and the most encouraging part about the entire game was that he didn't really force anything outside of the throw in the double coverage to Adam Thielen, which he made a miraculous catch. But other than that, he was just getting the ball in the playmakers' hands and letting those guys play and make plays, which is what you want to see out of Kirk Cousins. That's when he's at his best, when he's in that point guard role and what I like to call the Rajon Rondo role. And he's just out there distributing the ball and letting those guys make plays. And that's what he was brought here to do. And that's not necessarily a knock against him because he's not a guy that you're going to build an offense around where he's a catalyst, but you want him to be that final piece to the puzzle. And that's what he was here with this offense. You already have playmakers that we alluded to earlier in Dalvin Cook and the two top receivers in Diggs and Thielen. So he was just distributing the ball to those guys. And even Kyle Rudolph got in on some occasions as well. So it was really encouraging to see the offense open up a bit. And I thought this was one of the better games from them from an efficiency standpoint and from a game plan standpoint. I thought they were very efficient in a lot of different areas. It was nice to see them incorporate and have some success with the running game as well. Defensively, I thought they played really well. They got off to a bit of a rough start. Devontae Adams had his way with the Xavier Rose, but he started to calm down, and I thought they did a really good job of getting home with just 4. They didn't really blitz Rodgers a bunch. They showed blitzes. I know Mike Zimmer brought up that he didn't really want to blitz Rodgers. He just wanted to sit back and play coverage against him because when you do blitz him, that's when he is at his best because he can pick and choose where he wants to go, especially when you're playing man coverage against him. I thought Mike Zimmer did a really good job of mixing in his different looks as well. I know we saw a really funky look where he lined up Harrison Smith right over the center, and then he had Eric Kendricks and Anthony Barr in the A gaps, but they didn't really blitz at all from that look. Just switching up those looks and giving Aaron Rodgers a variety of different looks. I thought Mike Zimmer did a hell of a job with that, and that's what you want to do against a quarterback of Aaron Rodgers' caliber. You want to switch up the looks as much as possible so he can't pick and choose where he wants to go with the ball. But overall, I thought this was a very encouraging win, especially with 2 big games coming up, starting off with the Patriots this week and then leading up to the Seattle game as well.
Yeah, and one of the things, and I know Prince has had this take on a couple of occasions as well, but there have been times throughout the season where we've talked about maybe the Vikings having a lack of identity on offense, or just lack of identity. They're putting up stats, but like you really don't know who the dogs are on offense, who the leaders are, and it was nice, I think, for them to, like Prince has always said, the offense seems to run better when they get Diggs going early, but Diggs, Dalvin kind of coming out and kind of being that spark and being the engine through which the offense ran kind of earlier in the game. really seemed, and Diggs being obviously used a little bit further downfield than he had been previously, as Miles said, Dalvin back being, allowing Dalvin to be the one who catches some of those swings and passes shorter, closer to the line of scrimmage. I really think hopefully will be some more of what the identity of this offense is as we start things off. And then obviously as time goes along, Thielen still gets his, Rudolph was able to get involved in this game, but really having those guys who seem to be more of maybe the fiery personalities, the guys that maybe get everyone else going on the team involved early, seem to have a really positive impact on kind of how the team played and where the team was from an emotional standpoint as the game rolled along.
Yeah, and I agree with every single point that you made, but the most encouraging part from this game was seeing them generate explosive plays. And I know we talked about this on a few previous episodes that's where the Vikings really lacked. They had a dink and dunk offense, but they really didn't have those plays where you were just like, man, they just go over the top and they go for like a 60 or 70-yard touchdown. They didn't do that in this game either, but you saw them having 40-yard touchdown. I believe Dalvin Cook was like 30 or 35 yards. So just seeing them generate some type of explosive plays and not just always depending on putting 10 to 12 play drives together in hopes of getting field goals or ending up in touchdowns, just generating those explosive plays and ending with touchdowns. That was very encouraging.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, this game is ended, and we're about to get into a stretch that is I guess we'll say it's an important one of the season to really determine what kind of team we have here with the with our Vikings. JR, are the Vikings about to go on a run?
I think they can. And I think this game could really start that run. Green Bay was a great win, but we know they're a bit down this year. But we're playing a really tough opponent this week. And whenever you're playing against Tom Brady, it's always going to be a tough matchup. So if they can go on the road and somehow find a way to win this game, I think it's going to be a huge confidence booster down the stretch. And just looking at the Bears' schedule, they might drop one to the Giants, considering that Trubisky is not playing this week. They have to play the Rams and the Packers in consecutive weeks. So that 1.5 game lead could suddenly shrink, and we could be looking at the Week 17 showdown for the NFC North. But the Vikings got to take care of business these next few weeks.
Okay, and yeah, and it's one of those things that feels weird to say because, like you're saying, it's a matchup against the Patriots and kind of that history and Belichick and Brady and all of that kind of stuff, but I don't know. As I start to think about how we match up going into this game, I feel I guess I feel more confident in the games where we're going in where we play a less than stellar defense, but maybe a good offense, because I feel like our defense, generally speaking, should be able to slow down the offenses that we go against. And especially in the terms of the Patriots, where we might be a little weak in the secondary. It's like not like the Patriots are super duper strong. But the Patriots aren't great defensively, which I think plays well to what we want to do on the team and the number of weapons that the Vikings have. And so I don't know, going into this game, I feel strangely, I hate to say confident, because that doesn't feel right as a Vikings fan going into a game, against the Patriots. But I feel confident about us matching up in this game. And especially when the line was released, I would definitely feel comfortable putting money on the Vikings based on that. Because I feel like this is a game that matches up nicely with what the Vikings are going to want to do defensively, and our offense should be able to score points against this team. Miles, as we get into it and you start to look at this game, I guess from the perspective of the Vikings, what are the big things? What are the big areas that you expect the Vikings to really go in this game looking to exploit to give them the advantage versus the other Patriots on offense?
Yeah, I think on offense they want to be able to. They've said all along that they want to continue to establish the run. I think if they can find ways to do that in space, some of the zone runs, which we haven't seen from this offensive line, and the play calling, instead of trying to do this smash mouth football, and we've seen Pat Elflein, we've seen Brian O'Neill, some of these guys work well in space. Get these offensive linemen out in space and let them run. If they want to run the ball, get them out in space and do it with Dalvin Cook. I think the continued jet sweeps and all that are great ideas. But I think just in general, continue to spread teams out the way they did against Green Bay, so that you can give Kirk easier reads, you can give Kirk quicker decisions. I think just in general, helping the pass rush out because the Patriots find ways to exploit things, and they're going to find that the one key area on our offense that they're going to try to exploit, which we know right now is the offensive line, but more likely the interior with Tom Compton, but more so like Mike Remmers might be that guy that they pinpoint as their like weak link that they're going to try to exploit on the interior. So just trying to find ways to make sure that you can help combat that, as well as make sure that you're they're going to try to double, Adam Thielen and potentially Stefon Diggs. We know he's been out the last 2 days of practice, but he says he's going to play. We'll see tomorrow based off his how his output is in practice. But they're going to try to double both those guys or take them away. You need somebody to step up. That third option needs to step up. Last week we saw it be a combination of Dalvin Cook and Kyle Rudolph, which I think ideally would be the situation you'd prefer. But you're going to need some guys to step up and make some plays again this week. Hopefully that is a Kyle Rudolph, Dalvin Cook in the pass game. But another receiver, Aldrick Robinson, Laquan Treadwell, somebody to step up. I mean, if Brandon Zylstra gets reps, who knows? But we know Chad Beebe's likely out, which is unfortunate because I think he would have been perfect for a game like this and how their offense is trending. Defensively, I think the Patriots are really just going to try to get us out in space, and I think they're going to try to exploit us with Rob Gronkowski by moving him around, and then I think they're going to try to attack Mackenzie Alexander on in the nickel. Actually, I take that back. If Xavier Rhodes is out, they're going to try to exploit Holton Hill and get him isolated on guys like Josh Gordon and Julian Edelman. So we'll see how that works out.
All right. Okay.
And James against our linebackers, because we've seen James White light up linebackers.
Yeah, that's no fun. So Saxy Prince, as you look at this game from a defensive perspective, Miles kind of laid out some problems there, some challenges that the Patriots might be able to put out there for us that'll be difficult for us to solve. Defensively, how are you attacking this Patriots team to smother them largely in the way that the Vikings were able to do against the Green Bay Packers?
Well, it's tough because the thing about the Patriots, I mean, it starts up front, right? And the thing about their interior is they have top 10 players at their positions on their interior. Both left guard, right guard, and then their center are playing some fantastic football right now. So, you would want to be able to attack them with like Linval or Sheldon Richardson. I think that was something that was working really well against the Packers. But, the issue becomes with players like that, you have to come up with something a little bit more unique. I definitely can see this being an Anthony Barr game where, you put him on the line a little bit more so to more just be a guy that kind of protects those edges against guys like James White. But, you can't, when you face quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, Drew Brees, those kind of guys is, they've seen most of the blitzes that they're going to see, and you really can't fool them. So I think it's going to be a pretty similar game plan as far as, maybe hang back in coverage and bring a guy or two back there. So then Tom Brady has less options as far as who he's going to find out and whatnot. I still think that the Vikings front four is very good, probably one of the top in the league, but I'm not sure if that'll be enough. So you have to kind of pick and choose. Are you bringing a guy towards the line, every so often, or you're hanging them back in coverage? I'd probably prefer, if they do something like that, Anthony Barr is on the line versus being in coverage. So it's going to be a pretty masterful thing that Zimmer's going to have to put together. I don't imagine a lot of stunts. I don't imagine, unique blitzes or whatnot. I would just imagine that Zimmer is probably going to play a relatively clean game. I do think that some of the keys, though, Jaron Kearse would probably be another guy that I would mention. He'd probably be an important player in this game. Obviously he's stepped into that big nickel role quite well. And I mean, it is limited snaps, but I do think that that's somewhat of the side advantage you're going to get with having to face a guy like Rob Gronkowski. He not very many players in the league that can match up against him athletically, But I mean, size wise, you have a guy like J-Ron Curse that maybe you can utilize him a little bit more so in the pass game. So Anthony Barr, J-Ron Curse, those are two guys that I think are going to be key to a Viking victory.
Okay, and JR, bringing it back around to you here. Obviously, we've it's been discussed here, kind of how the Vikings went about, setting up their game plan to slow down Aaron Rodgers, the discipline in the rush lanes, and the different things that they did there with the front four. Kind of going from a quarterback like an Aaron Rodgers who wants to extend plays and beat you, kind of off script. What are the challenges, the different sort of challenges that a quarterback like a Tom Brady will present for you, and then how might the Vikings adjust the game plan to deal with and account for those challenges of the different style of quarterback play that we'll be dealing with?
Yeah, so I think the game plan is going to be a polar opposite than what we saw last week, and I think you're going to have to blitz the crap out of Tom Brady. And I know that sounds crazy, but Matthew Coller wrote a great piece about this a couple of days ago. I'm sure you'll link it in the show notes, Jayson, and he was talking about how Brady's arm strength has deteriorated, and you can tell this season. And whenever he's pressured this year, his quarterback rating has dropped significantly. And when blitzes are able to get home, I think his quarterback rating drops all the way down to like 75 or 76, somewhere around there. So I think you're going to have to send a variety of different blitzes to Tom Brady. Now, that's putting a lot of stress on your secondary, but I think the Vikings still do have the personnel. Even if Xavier Rhodes is down, you're going to have to take some risk and show some trust in guys like J-Ron Curse and Holton Hill and some of the younger guys back there. But when you're playing a guy like Tom Brady, you cannot just sit back there and let him sit in the pocket like an Aaron Rodgers, because he's going to continue to pick you apart because he gets the ball out so quick. So you have to force him into some more quicker throws than what he's already demonstrating that he can make, and try to confuse him by switching up the looks. Even though he has played and seen every single defensive look possible, you have to switch up those looks and try to send some pressure and disguise some things when you're blitzing him.
Jared, with that, if you don't mind, just with the fact that obviously the Patriots have such skilled and quick playmakers, do you still feel as if, even with those blitzes, that the Vikings might get caught, on a play or two, with a really, really big play, because of the fact that, they are trying to send, a little bit more pressure to get to Tom Brady, but he's able to find some of those quicker outlets, which kind of puts the Vikings in a position to not be able to keep up.
Yeah, and it's tough because your linebackers are going to have to play the best game of their seasons, because James White, they're going to find a way to incorporate him in the passing game somehow, whether that's in the backfield or flexing him out wide. So Eric Kendricks and Anthony Barr are definitely going to have to come to play this game, but that's just some of the risks that you have to take when you're playing a guy like Tom Brady. You have to find a way to disguise those pressures, and even if that's leaving those guys in those man-to-man situations, you have to take those type of risks. Otherwise, he's just going to sit back and pick you apart if you just want to sit back and play zone coverage against him. That's just not the recipe of success, or the recipe to have success against Tom Brady. So Anthony Barr and Eric Kendricks, they're going to be left on the island against Sonny Michel and James White. You just have to have trust in those guys to be able to get the job done.
So with that said, obviously the linebackers are key, but which of the Vikings players, just generally speaking, and we'll go rapid fire right down the line on this one here. Which Vikings defender are you most worried about being picked on in coverage as this game goes on? Just knowing how savagely the Patriots can kind of find a weakness and pick on it, JR.
It's Holton Hill. If Xavier Rhodes doesn't play, which I don't think he is, I think they're going to find a way to find him right away, just like the Packers did last week when they ran the double move with Devontae Adams, but Aaron Rodgers overthrew him. I think they're going to find a way to scheme either putting Gronk on the outside against him, or Josh Gordon on the outside against him, just to pick on him a little bit, just because he is so young.
Okay, Miles, how about you? Who you worried about being the mark this week, getting picked on by the Patriots?
Just to be different, even though I said Holton Hill earlier, I'm going to say Eric Kendricks. I know he's played better as of late in coverage, but I just think trying to match him up downfield with running backs and tight ends, I think, could really be a recipe for disaster. I know That's where I'm worried. Just the linebackers in general. I think Anthony Barr played well, but I mean, we've seen teams find ways to like create mismatches to get him isolated one-on-one with wide receivers and running backs like Todd Gurley. So I'll say the linebackers in general because of Gronkowski and guys like James White.
Okay, and Saxy Prince, bring us home. Who are you most worried about getting picked on in this game?
I think JR probably picked the top guy. I'll maybe say I don't know. Maybe whoever they put. I don't envision the Vikings being in base very often, but I guess if they found themselves in base, Ben getting Eric Wilson, they could just do what they did a couple of years. What a lot of teams were doing a couple of years ago, in which they were essentially just playing more quick offense in order to keep the Vikings in base if they ever were in base. So I would say whoever that that strong side linebacker is, or weak side linebacker, excuse me, to play that, and I could see the Vikings definitely being put in that position.
Okay, and I guess the final point that I wanted to ask you guys schematically about this one, and JR, I'll start with you. Miles kind of said something that I was gonna to ask about there in terms of earlier in the season against good offenses, the Rams in particular, we saw them being able to kind of use their personnel to create those matchups. Since us really getting beat down in that game and really exploited, and Anthony Barr was you kind of put that memory of himself chasing players as they scored touchdown in their minds and kind of had Vikings fans really, really sour on him as a player. Those sorts of things haven't really happened as much. What if the Vikings changed defensively to stop being exploited in that manner that happened earlier in the season, especially given that we're going against a team that is known to do similar things to try to find those matchups?
I don't think they've changed anything, honestly. I mean, they're playing a little bit more of a simpler defense because Zimmer's not bringing any more pressures than what he normally does. They're getting home with 4, which I think his defense is predicated upon, and they've done a hell of a job of. And when you're able to get home with 4 guys, just the four guys up front, it makes everything so much easier because you're not having to sacrifice another guy in coverage because you're blitzing them to the quarterback. So they haven't really switched anything up. Now, what's different about other offenses compared to the Rams offenses, they're not as versatile and they don't have as many guys or weapons on the perimeter as other teams. Or excuse me, other teams don't have as many weapons or the same type of personnel that the Rams have. So they're not able to show one personnel on the field and then shift to a completely entire different set like we saw in that game. So the Vikings aren't really doing anything. They're doing a better job of generating pass rush up front with just 4 guys. And the offenses that they have played in the past few weeks just aren't as versatile or as complex as the Rams offense.
Awesome. And Miles, you did make the point. I guess, is there anything that in terms of some of the things that we did see in that Rams game that you would expect to see out of the Patriots, or is it kind of like JR says that with the Vikings starting to settle in on defense, you feel like they're going to be okay?
Yeah, I think what JR said, they're okay. They've gone back to some of the way that the things they used to do instead of trying to get cute, and think they can play man across the board against some of these teams. But no, yeah, to JR's point, I think that's exactly it. I think they're doing a better job with it. So I'm not as worried about it, but with the Patriots, we know that they do a pretty good job of exploiting some of those sort of mismatches.
All right. Well, there's one last question I want to ask for you guys, not necessarily specific to this game necessarily, but it's an ongoing talking point that has gone on throughout the season. It was definitely a big topic of conversation heading into the Packers game. So I want to get your perspectives on it. I want to get your thoughts. Mike Zimmer, and I know that we've made points about him needing to be kind of the CEO of the team, things like that. But there's I guess we'll say a vocal segment of the Vikings fan base that feels that Mike Zimmer needs to get more involved with the offense of the team. And I wanted to get your thoughts on it because I have some. I mean, generally speaking, when you are reading about leadership and things like that, you'll often be told you should lead from the places of your strength, and you should, I guess in a kind of way, stay in your lane. Steve Jobs would say things like, hire good people and then get out of their way. And so it seemed as though, Vikings fans were looking or kind of looking to have Mike Zimmer go against that sort of defense, that sort of your thought process. So I wanted to get your takes, your thoughts on this idea that Mike Zimmer needed to become more actively involved in what was going on the offense of the team, given that that's not really his background, not really his strength, not really where he's made his name in the league, and kind of how we think that should look as the season kind of moves forward and we roll into the playoffs.
I mean, I don't really see the value in that. Maybe just because of how advanced these offenses are, and with Mike Zimmer basically starting from step one, learning offenses, I just don't see the value that he would bring to the table if he tries to learn certain offenses. And I mean, Zim's in his 60s, so all he wants to do is establish the run. If he does want to go more offense oriented, he doesn't know much probably about what's going on from an offensive standpoint and what offenses are trying to execute. He looks at it from a defensive standpoint. So with him looking at things from an offensive perspective, I just don't see the value that he would bring to the table. Now, if he wants to be more of a CEO, I've been all for that. And with George Edwards calling plays, the only evidence we have of him calling plays was against the Cowboys a couple years ago, which I thought the defense played really well. But with Mike Zimmer, we know he's very hands-on, and he seems to be a bit of a control freak on that side of the ball, and he wants to run what he wants to run in certain situations. So I don't think we'll ever see him being that total overseer or CEO of the Vikings.
All right. And Miles, what are your thoughts? In your perfect world, is Zim kind of more involved? Does he have more input, more say in what we're doing, offensively on the team?
I don't think so. And we know, like Jared said, he's not going to get to that point, like in terms of understanding it. I don't think it's something he needs to do to be a good coach, to be a good CEO. I think what he's really trying to do is trying to do a better job of balancing his team and how he wants his team and the identity of his overall team to be. But at the end of the day, I think he needs to take that factor out of it, not to an extent. Like every team has their overall identity, and I think I'm okay with him wanting to be. I'm not okay with him wanting to be conservative, but I'm okay with him wanting to be a little bit more ball control. But that doesn't mean it needs to be a run the ball 25, 30 plus times a game. And the way he wants to do it, the way he's seen it done in, the Adrian Peterson era, the 1990s, the old school mentality. It doesn't need to be that way to have ball control, to be that aspect of an offense. So I think that's the disconnect. But I think that's just where Zim just needs to kind of, hopefully you keep a guy like John DeFilippo into another season and they can build that rapport in the offseason. They can build that understanding of continuing to grow that offense so that there's a more of an understanding between the two. But right now it doesn't seem that that's the case. We'll see it. We'll see how it goes on, but I think Zim needs to loosen the reins a little bit.
All right. Well, we lost Saxy Prince, which, was to be expected. He did let us know before we started recording that he had some things he needed to do today. So we'll just jump in. We'll get, y'all's bold prediction, score prediction, and we will wrap this thing on up. So Miles, kick us off here. Score prediction, bold prediction. What do you think of him, man?
I'm going to go 20-16 Patriots. I don't like going against the Vikings, but I just think it's a tough one. But I also think it's going to be a pretty low-scoring game. And I'm going to go bold prediction. They hold Tom Brady under 150 passing yards.
Oh, my goodness.
And still lose.
Oh, my goodness. And still, Lord have mercy. All right, so hold on. Run that back for me one more time here. So, this what we go with on the score on this one?
20-16 Patriots. Bold prediction to hold Tom Brady under 150 points, 150 passing yards.
Oh my, okay, but they still do.
Establish the run. That's what they're gonna do.
Yep.
Sony Michelle.
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right, JR.
You said go bold, so I mean,
hey, I like it. JR, how about you, man?
I hope
What you got?
the second part. I hope the bold prediction happens. I obviously hope the score outcome is different.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't feel good about this game at all. Just whenever my team's going against Tom Brady, I just don't feel good about it, especially on the road. And the last time we were in Foxborough, it did not go well. So I'm gonna go Patriots 24-20. And bold prediction, I actually think Dalvin Cook is gonna have a good day, so he'll get his second career 100-yard game.
Get this in here, Dalvin. Okay, 100. All right. Well, I guess I will be the one who goes the other way with this because, as I've said earlier in the week on Twitter, I feel good about this game. I feel good about how we match up. So I'm going to pull. I'm going down for the Vikings to pull the upset in this one on the road. Luckily, not in prime time, but on the road to pull the upset. And I'm actually go Vikings 28, Patriots 22. And my bold prediction is Kirk Cousins puts up a better stat line than Tom Brady and puts himself back into the MVP conversation that really shouldn't be happening. I mean, for Vikings fans, he'll be
That's
there.
big coming from you.
Yeah. I mean, he'll be there in Vikings Twitter. I mean, I think everywhere else people know it's Drew Brees and Pat Mahomes, but in Vikings Twitter, he'll get himself back into the, MVP conversation after out-dueling Aaron Rodgers and then Tom Brady back-to-back weeks. Yep, there it is. All right. Well, that's it. That's all. We made it all the way to the end. I guess, JR, do you have anything upcoming that we should be aware of? Anything you want to plug before we get on out of here?
Yeah, so my first scouting report of the year is up on InsideThePylon.com. It's on Arizona State wide receiver N'Keal Harry. Make sure you go check that out.
All right. And of course, we will put a link to that in the show notes. And Miles, anything cooking? Anything we should be on the lookout for?
Yeah, I'm gonna start getting into some college stuff too. So I'm working on how I want to take the approach. But you know me, I'm gonna probably look at some Vikings needs in terms of what they'd be looking for in the offseason from a draft perspective. So obviously wide receiver, obviously offensive line, stuff like that. But I'm just figuring out the format.
All right. Dalton Reisner or nobody. Well, all right, listeners, as always, thanks for sticking with us. Gentlemen, thanks for coming on and recording. Yeah, that's it. We made it to the end, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Have a good one.